So I decided to do my video on Jim Crow laws. So first off, Jim Crow laws were named after a popular type of play, where white men and women would dress up in blackface, and it was almost like a comedy in a way. Like they would just spend the whole play making fun of people of color. These laws were in effect from 1877 to the mid 1960s about. And they were mostly in effect in the South and the states that border Mexico. Um, Jim Crow laws were not only like an anti-black law, but also an anti-American lifestyle. People wouldn't just be like, "Oh, it's a law." They kind of made it like their whole entire life was about segregation and just treating people really bad. Um, Many white Americans justified this blatant racism by saying God approved of it, and that's why African Americans naturally weren't as smart or had so much morality as they do, or were more uncivilized, which really was not the case. Like obviously, if you don't let someone go to school, they're not going to be as smart as you are. That's just facts. Um, so they would even go so far as to beat and sometimes even lynch African Americans who would step out of line. And this line had like so many rules that a man named Stetson Kennedy even went as far as to write a book called Jim Crow Guide to show all the rules. These rules varied from not being able to like show public affection to another African American, which could even just mean like a simple hug or a kiss on the cheek, or not being able to laugh around white people. Um, Sorry about that. So most people, when they think of Jim Crow laws, they think of just the laws, but there's actually a thing called Jim Crow etiquette. This would exclude African Americans from public transportation and facilities, certain jobs, and specific neighborhoods. I'm going to insert a picture right here about someone not being what they would have as like their rules for who could and couldn't be there. This way of treating people was legalized in 1896 by the Plessy versus Ferguson Act, which legally let the state of Louisiana provide equal but separate accommodations for the white and colored races. They go as far as to have separate bathrooms, separate water fountains, separate buses to give the illusion that they were equal, but everyone knew that that's all it was. It was just an illusion. In an interview with Freedom Riders, Diane Nash recalls that traveling in the segregated South was very humiliating for all people of color. She would say, quote, "The very fact that there were separate facilities was to say to black people and white people that blacks were so subhuman and inferior that we couldn't even use public facilities that white people used." Now, many people think like, oh, that was such a long time ago. Why do we really care about it? But it honestly wasn't. In 1954, having separate schools was finally considered unconstitutional by the Supreme Court, so they abolished that, and the remaining Jim Crow laws were abolished by the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. But the Jim Crow laws, although aren't technically in effect still, they still affect so many people, and it's still like a mindset that many older people have, and it's just like so terrible.